One of the questions I get so much from parents and even students is, how does scaling work? How do they calculate the ATAR? How do they keep everything fair? So when you're doing assessments at school, obviously your assessments are not the same as the next school's assessments. So how do they sort of what counts in terms of the marks, and how do they calculate everything? So the key thing to remember is that the Board of Studies or NESA never actually see the physical marks that you get for an assessment task. What they do see is the rank that you end up getting at the end of the year once you finish all your assessments. So what happens is that you've got a cohort, and however all of you perform in terms of that cohort will all be ranked. And then when you get to the HSC exam, which is the only standardized exam that anybody does, standardized in terms of the questions being asked and then how it actually gets marked, that's where they figure out all the marks, both for your assessment mark as well as your HSC mark. So let's say, for example, you've got 30 people in your grade, and people are ranked between 1 and 30, and then the person who comes first ended up getting a mark of 95, and the person who came 30th got a mark of 80. What in the HSC, what they'll then do is they will figure out an assessment mark based on the rank that you got inside of that pool of marks of 80 to 95. So if you got halfway, so you were sort of on the average for your grade, so let's say you were 15th, this school has a very high average apparently, but let's say 15th, then they're going to give you a mark of roughly 88 for your assessment. And then obviously whatever you get for your exam mark is what you get for your exam mark. And then they halve that, and then that's how you get your final mark for the subject. In terms of things like calculating ATARs and scaling, so that is quite a tricky art. But basically, the harder your subject is, the more they're going to scale it up. So subjects like 4-unit maths, physics, 4-unit English, the really harder subjects, if you're getting a mark of, say, something like 75, they may push that up to 85 or 90. So again, not an exact art, but they do give or scale things based on the level of difficulty for the subject, and potentially even the difficulty of the actual exam. So it was a very difficult exam across the board, and students generally performed quite poorly. They will also sort of moderate based on the level of difficulty there as well. So all you can really do is, pick the subjects that you think you're going to do the best in. Taking scaling into account, I think, is still a good idea. So if you're in year 10 and you're doing subject selection and you're sort of wondering which one to do, let's say you're choosing between standard maths and advanced maths, the basic difference is that advanced maths is going to get you to do a Shakespeare, and they do more complex text. In terms of the actual writing quality, it's still got to be at a very high standard for standard English if you are going to be getting a high mark. You just do generally easier texts, right? And the concepts are a little bit simpler as well. But obviously it's a lot easier, it's easier to get a higher mark if you're doing advanced, because they do hand out more sort of band 6 marks for advanced, but of course you have to be competent with the more complex material. So you've got to sort of make your judgment based on, your level of commitment. So how much work are you going to put into it? How committed are you to getting a good mark in that particular subject? And therefore, that should sort of contribute to your decision there. Sometimes it is better to do a lower level and do much better in it than to pick high level and really struggle and do, go lower. So, that's something that you can generally talk to your teachers about, in terms of making that decision. I think it's always potentially good to do a higher level and then drop down rather than just going for the low one, because you can always drop down. You can't ever go up. So that's a key thing to sort of keep in mind as well. So hopefully that explains things a little bit in terms of what counts, how everything, contributes to the final mark. And the thing to also keep in mind is that they are doing a lot of early entry offers now as well. So your marks in year 11 really do make a difference. So if you're in year 10 now going into year 11, this is relevant before year 10 as well, because you don't just arrive at year 10 and suddenly do everything. You've got to sort of build it up. But in year 10, you're choosing your subjects, then you've got your marks that you can get for the end of year 11, and your year 11 marks could now contribute to whether or not you actually get into your course, which you also then won't know until this year it was mostly after the HSC trial. So you still got to do, work and put in as much effort as you can, regardless of, you know, how well you go at the end of year 11, because there's no guarantees. But it may be the case that, you know, after trials or before the HSC, you may have been granted an early offer entry from your year 11 mark. So lots of things have changed over the years, I must say. I've been doing this for over 20 years now. But in the end, you know, just do the best you can with the subjects you have, and then you'll keep your options open, and that's always the best place to be.